Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs was a victory for democracy in America. Abortion is an issue on which the American people have strong and passionate views and disagree, as the witnesses here at this hearing demonstrate. Those disagreements have been longstanding, and the way our Constitution operates, typically on issues in which there is sharp disagreement, it is the democratic process that resolves that disagreement. When the Supreme Court decided Roe v. Wade in 1973, 7 unelected judges said to the American people, your views don't matter. Your desire to protect innocent life doesn't matter. We know better than you, and we are going to prevent you from making decisions about protecting life. The consequence of that has been 5 decades of deep political division because the democratic process was prevented from operating. Now that a 6-3 majority of the Supreme Court has overturned that decision, questions of abortion will return to the elected branches of government. The democratic process will be allowed to operate. That will mean in bright blue states, tragically, we'll continue to see unlimited abortion on demand. And in redder states, we will see some meaningful restrictions on abortions. And those restrictions will vary state by state, depending on the values and mores of their citizens. That's how our Constitution was meant to operate. If you disagree with the abortion laws in your state, you have an outlet to express that disagreement. You have an outlet to be involved in the political process. You have an outlet to advocate for what you believe the laws should be. You're not forced to live under the rule of unelected judges operating as philosopher kings and decreeing the rules for 330 million Americans. I believe abortion's a tragedy. The over 60 million unborn children who've never breathed a breath of air, who've never lived, who've never danced, who've never hugged, who've never loved. Our country is far poorer for the millions of African American children who never had a chance to live and contribute to our country. Unfortunately, one of the consequences of the court taking this out of the democratic process is today's modern Democrat Party has become radicalized on abortion. The case Planned Parenthood versus Casey, a lot of people don't know that the Casey in question there was Governor Bob Casey, who was a Democrat and was pro-life. Today's Democrat Party has said, if you're pro-life, get the hell out. Your views are not welcome in our party. Part of the reason that Democrats in this hearing are painting the Dobbs decision in such apocalyptic terms is they know their view of abortion, which is unlimited abortion on demand up until the moment of birth, partial birth abortion with government funding, with no parental notification and no parental consent, is supported by a tiny minority of Americans. They know that the voters, when given a chance, don't support that radical view. And I will point out, there was a time when Democrats used to say the same thing. We all remember Bill Clinton, who said he wanted to see abortion safe, legal, and rare. Today's Democrat Party doesn't want it rare. It wants as much abortion as possible. Well, I'll tell you this. When Roe v. Wade was decided, one Democrat who spoke up against it was a fellow named Joseph Robinette Biden, who said in 1974, quote, I don't like the Supreme Court decision on abortion. I think it went too far. I don't think that a woman has the sole right to say what should happen to her body. That was Joe Biden in 1974. And you may say, okay, that was a long time ago. All right, let's go to 2007, just 15 years ago. 2007, Joe Biden. Tim Russert says, you supported that ban on late-term abortions. Biden said, I did, and I do. That was 15 years ago. Just weeks ago, the Democrats in this body voted to strike down every restriction on abortion across this country, including bans on partial birth abortion, and every single Democrat but one voted for it. Now, maybe you might say, you know what, Joe Biden was out of step. Well, there's someone else who had similar views, the chairman of this committee. In a June 1983 letter, the chairman of this committee wrote, quote, "I have clearly studied the issue, abortion, in depth, and favor the Eagleton Amendment, which states clearly that the right to abortion is not guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. The effect of this amendment will be to return us to the legal environment which existed before Roe v. Wade in 1973, signed Richard J. Durbin, Member of Congress." That view continued. In August of 1989, Chairman Durbin wrote, and again I quote, "I believe we should end abortion on demand, and at every opportunity I have translated this belief into votes in the House of Representatives." He continued to say, "I continue to believe the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade should be reversed." That was the view of a lot of Democrats not that long ago. But today's Democratic Party is afraid of the voters on this issue. What the Supreme Court has done is returned this deeply personal, deeply important, deeply contentious issues to the voters, to let the American people decide. That's democracy. And all of us should be happy about that.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the women who've come here to testify. I know it's a sacrifice to come in for such an important day. Ms. Harley, can I just ask you a quick question? And just for the sake of time, could you just give me from your heart a yes or no? If Congress were to pass a national abortion ban, would that be something you would support?
I think our laws should protect all human life.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Stratton, there's been a lot, some said by my colleagues about, I seem to imply that that allowing women to have access to safe abortion care is somehow racist against African Americans. Would you take a brief moment to address that for me?
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator, for that question. First and foremost, I would think as we look at the disproportionate impact that abortion bans and restrictions have on Black women in particular, and the harm that has been caused, it is cruel to deny that access to abortion is actually what is liberating for Black women, to be able to have bodily autonomy and the ability to decide what's best for their bodies, for their lives, and their futures. I am the mother, as I said in my opening remarks, of 4 daughters, 3 of whom are adults. And I had to have a very painful conversation with them, first upon the leak decision and then, of course, with the Dobbs ruling, about how could they possibly have fewer rights than their mother had. They should be able to decide for themselves and make a personal decision about what is in their futures. And we've already had a conversation about maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates related to the racial disparities that are attached to that. So this is to talk about what happens with children and recognizing that after a child is born, that they do not have access to resources. They are not given what's needed to address the systemic racism that they are going to experience throughout their lives, to make sure that there's no help that's given to these families, Black and brown families across our country, in the wake of these abortion bans and restrictions. It's contradictory to so much of what we have heard today. This is not about helping. This is only going to harm and cause immeasurable suffering.